Hello everyone! Today I have a super exciting video for you, and that is 15 priority books for 2025. And this is exclusively for science fiction and fantasy. I have a couple of additional books that I obviously want to get to, and this is by no means a very strict TBR for 2025, but rather these are the 15 SFF books that I am the most excited about. And I would go as far as to say that if these are the only 15 books that I read next year, I would be very happy. So that's kind of where we're at today. And yeah, I will probably just start with all of the fantasy ones and then do the sci-fi ones and then one special one. So let's just go straight into it, and we're going to start with The Wisdom of Crowds by Joe Abercrombie. This is the third book in the Age of Madness trilogy. I am currently reading through this trilogy. I've read A Little Hatred already, and I want to finish it. So I'm cheating a bit here because reading The Wisdom of Crowds means that I've also read the second book. So these are basically two books in one. But I want to finish this trilogy. I've been longing for Abercrombie's writing and world, and it has been so fun to be back in A Little Hatred, and I want to finish it. His characters are amazing. I think his writing has improved for the better in multiple ways. I liked seeing how this world develops and it progresses and what new challenges comes with that, because a lot of times you have fantasy worlds that are just stay stagnated in one piece of time, uh, which can be interesting for some projects. But I think in particular what I like so far with the Age of Madness is that we're seeing the world change, and what does this change mean for the people. And yeah, very very cool. So in second place we have Discworld, and honestly I am so pumped to go back to Discworld, and it could be any book here. I think most likely I will be reading Small Gods or the second book in the Guards storyline. I think Men at Arms, I think it's called. Any of those are probably going to be my next Discworld read, and I'm just so excited. Discworld was such a I had a really good introduction to Discworld with Guards. Not necessarily the most memorable book in terms of its plot, but I had so much fun reading it. The writing style is very witty and very consumable, but in a way that, just flies. And something that I really like about this world is that it manages to be extremely absurd while at the same time having something to say about society or religion or people or leaders or friends, institutions. Like, I think that balance is great, because if it's just absurdism and just bananas, I don't necessarily like it. But I think the way these two things are balanced and interwoven in the story is just so special and so unique. So yeah, I need to get back to this world. The next book is going to be The Crippled God, which is the last book in Malasan Book of the Fallen. So I'm cheating again here because I am still missing 3 books in this long series. But by this, I'm trying to say that I want to finish it. I've talked about this series a bit already, so I will not go into so many details. But basically, I took a pretty big break this year with Malasan, even though, I mean, now that I went through my reading stats, or very recently, I still read 3 or 4 books in the Malasan world this year, and these are like 1,200 plus page books. So these are not easy in their content or because of how complex they are. So I took a big break, and I'm ready to go back with Toll the Hounds is the next book that I need to read, and hopefully in 2024, or not hopefully, it's the point. The intention here is to read everything. So reading The Crippled God and finishing Malasan. Panic. um, the next one is, Moonwitch Spider King. This is the continuation to Black Leopard Red Wolf by Marlon James, a book that just took me away this year. I think it's so refreshing to read a book that is so different to everything else that I've read. And yeah, I just want to be good and intentional with finishing or continuing a series that I really liked. So because I really enjoyed the first book, I want to make sure that I don't leave months and months until continuing. And I know the third book is coming out sometime in the near future, so I want to make sure that I'm caught up. So Moonwitch Spider King is the continuation to this amazing, very dark story. The first book followed a guy that was known for being a good tracker and the people around him, and he is put in charge, uh, tracking the son of the king basically. And I'm pretty sure that in Moonwitch Spider King you follow more or less the same story but through the perspective of another character. And these experiments of just repeating the story but through someone else's eyes, I think can be very very fascinating. So I am just really excited to go back into this world and to see what Marlon James has for us readers in this continuation. Yeah, let's go to the next one, and it's The Spear Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez. This is a fantasy book by the same author that wrote The Banished Birds, another book that I really, really enjoyed this year. And I think, in a similar vein to Black Leopard, Red Wolf, I want to be intentional and read books by the same author, or from books that I really enjoyed. I want to read more books by that author, which is, I think, a good idea. If you really like something, read more of by the same person, right? And I know that Spirit Cuts Through Water has a very different premise to The Banished Birds. It's actually fantasy, not sci-fi, and I think it follows two young men in a quest type of experience. I'm not exactly sure about all of the details, but everyone that talks about The Banished Birds and that really liked it or did not like it, it feels like everyone that reads the Spirit Cuts Through Water enjoys it, regardless of their thoughts on The Banished Birds. So I'm just really excited to jump into fantasy written by POC authors. I think it's really cool to have. It's just exciting to have so good fantasy written by POC authors. So that is that one. And then the next one is The Tainted Cup. This is a very recent release. I forget the name of this author, but this is a story that is kind of pitched like Sherlock Holmes meets eco horror, kind of, because you follow a pair of detectives um, that are, I think, very, very interesting because one of them has a power of basically following trails by by how they smell, um, and that is kind of their thing. So they can go into a crime scene and kind of smell it and get clues out of that. I think that's how it works. And at the same time, you have a an element of eco horror ish, or like you have, yeah. I think this world has a lot of uh, has like plant organisms that are potentially malevolous. I'm not exactly sure, but that sounds super cool. I also want to be a bit more intentional with reading more recent releases, and I know that the second book is coming out in 2025. So I just love eco horror elements in stories, and yeah, I know it's kind of thrilling. It's more of a mystery fantasy, which I'm also open to try that. Yeah, I think that's everything that I need to be sold on a story. I'm just ready to try unique unique fantasy next year. And the last but definitely not least is The Grace of Kings. This is the first book in a 4-book fantasy series that I forgot the name of by Ken Liu. And I think it has gotten very, very popular in the recent years. I know that this series has a lot to do with engineering, and it's actually a bit of a sci fantasy story because you have like flying ships, I think, and there's a lot of technology and machinery. And I've heard that this kind of engineering element is very fascinating if you like hard science fiction. And I've only read, so Ken Liu is, I think, was very well known in the past because he translated some of the books in the Three Body Problem, and I think he's also I think he has a couple of science fiction in translation where he's the translator and even editor on some of these compilations. I think I read one of those called like Secret Planets or Hidden Planets. Anyways, I don't know so much about this other than it's epic and massive, and the engineering part of it just interests me so much. So yeah, let's see what this is going to be like. Um, and that's basically it for fantasy. So let's just move into sci-fi, and to no surprise for anyone who's seen my videos, the absolute first priority in terms of science fiction needs to be Cloud Cuckoo Land. I've talked about this in a couple videos, and basically it's just been in my shelves for so long. I have very little idea of what this is, but I know that it is compared sometimes to Cloud Atlas, which is one of my favorite books of all time. And in this story of Cloud Cuckoo Land, you have, similarly to Cloud Atlas, I think three narratives that are happening at very different points in time. I think one has to do with like, I think one is set in Constantinople or around that time. Actually, let's just like look into this. I was right. This actually follows a couple of characters. Some of them are at the time of the siege of Constantinople. So that is one narrative. Then you have some other people that are in modern day Chicago or Ohio, in the United States somewhere, in an attack of a public library. So you have kind of the past, you have present, and then you have a character that is far off into the future. So again, very Cloud Atlas-esque. But I love this narrative element of having his stories that connect across time and space. I think it's so beautiful when it's done right, and that's everything I know. Right? You have these these three stories that will somehow be connected. I really like this theme of interconnectedness, and I've seen that even when experiencing stories that are like the individual stories themselves don't necessarily need to be the most interesting or unique, but if the connections are done properly or like meaningfully, that addition of the parts can be so much more than the individual components, at least for me. So I just hope that this story lands for me. It's a pretty chunky book. I think that's why I've also been uh, keeping it kind of on the sidelines. But it's time. It's done time to to read Cloud Cuckoo Land. Also, like this cover again. Come on, isn't that so beautiful? The next book that I want to read is a story that I've already mentioned, and that is The Three Body Problem, which is the first book in the Remnants of the Earth trilogy, I think is what it's called, by Liu Cixin. Cixin Liu, I want to say. Um, yeah, this is a first contact with aliens story, which is another one of my favorite tropes of all time. Which also means that I don't like knowing so much of what the story is about because it's first contact, so I want that to be, a mystery. But I know it has mind blowing science fiction, and I think it's hard science fiction for the most part, in that it has a lot of like science concepts, which I've been really wanting to read something like that. And I think actually in one of those compilations that I talked about that Ken Liu put together or translated, I read a short story by the author of The Three Body Problem, and I'm pretty sure that it's actually a section of the book uh, that was maybe first written as a short story and then incorporated into the book, and that story was amazing. It was basically, you have this general in ancient China who is trying to, who basically builds a computer with soldiers who, so basically they give like each soldier two flags, I think, like a white and red flag, or I think they are instructed to like, if you basically this is so hard to explain, but they build like logical gates with people. So imagine you're told like, okay, if the person behind you does I don't know, left and right, then you also raise both hands. If they only do right, then you also do right, and so on. So they build like the AND gates and the OR gates and blah blah, and they just build on this, and he just builds a computer with his army, and I thought that was like crazy cool. Uh, and yeah, so I think that is in the three body problem I want to say. And if it's not, then I still love the story, so I'm very excited to read more of his work. It's a very controversial author, and I do want to mention that. I think he has gone on everything with China is so complicated. um, but yeah, let's just say that this author has supported controversial laws of the Chinese state government, um, which I just want to put that out. But I'm still very interested to read his work. I know that this is a very popular and well loved series, so I just hope that I also really like it. And moving on, we have The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin. I've also talked about this book recently, and yeah, so I'm just gonna be brief, but I've been meaning to read this for a very long time. I also want to give another chance to Ursula K. Le Guin, because her story Lathe of Haven was very interesting, very fascinating premise, but the execution did not work really well for me. But one of my best friends loves her works, and this one in particular, so I hope to do a read along with this one. And that's going to be super fun. I think it's going to be a book that is great for discussions with the themes of gender in society and otherness. I think that's going to be so fun to have a discussion with my friends. So that's The Left Hand of Darkness. And then moving on, we have The Mountain in the Sea. And the only reason why this is here, I don't know if you've watched my worst books of the year video, but mini spoiler alert, The Children of Ruin was the worst book that I read in 2024. And this book, The Mountain in the Sea, I think at the time when it came out was pitched as like the rival of Children of Ruin, because it's also about sentient octopi, uh, and I don't want to know anything else. I just hope that The Mountain in the Sea lives up to my wish of having a cool sentient octopi fighting with humans, or like dealing with that. And I think it's going to be very interesting. I've heard uh, all kinds of reviews from The Mountain in the Sea, but I just think it cannot be Children of Ruin. There's no way it's that bad. And I think this one in particular is more the project that I wanted Children of Ruin to be. So I don't know, I'm just really excited to see hopefully an actual octopi civilization develop, and how it interacts with humans. And so that's everything I need to know. The next book that I want to read is Empire of Silence by Christopher Rocchio. This has very quickly become BookTube's darling in the sci-fi communities, and I am ready to jump into it as well. The story sounds very interesting. You follow a main character that is the heir or the prince or son of an emperor, and he is telling his own story as an old man, I think. Uh, and the whole kind of premise is that he did something that destroyed the sun, and obviously this probably led to catastrophic damage in the empire, and probably a lot of deaths. And so you are following, or he's retelling you the story of, I would assume, how he got to that event, and what are the circumstances that got him there and everything. And it sounds very interesting. I know that a lot of people bounce off this series very quickly, so I know that it's a very, I think it's one of those books where you, if you read the first two books, you will know very quickly if it's for you. It's not like you need to read four or five books to really know if like this is where it's at. I think people love it or hate it very quickly, which is nice. And I know it's an ongoing series, so there's a lot of conversation right now, which makes it very exciting to just read now. I think there's six books in the series right now, or five, and there's just one more coming out next year, I want to say. Yeah, so as shown, like I don't know that much about it. I think my only apprehension about this story is that you follow this one person, and if that's true, well, I just mentioned earlier that I don't love necessarily like single POV stories, especially when it's a complex world with a lot of factions, and it's not necessarily meant to be so intimate. Like I want to follow people that are in different pieces of the puzzle. I don't want to follow one single person. I sometimes get tired of single POV narratives, and so I think that's kind of why one of the things that has put me off this story. And it sounds a bit like it has a lot of Dune inspiration, in terms of you have like this young charismatic leader that becomes a, or I don't know if there's actually tyranny involved in this story, but I mean at least you have a very kind of apocalyptic event happening caused by him. So I just want to know what all the buzz is about. It sounds very interesting, and yeah, I want to at least start it in 2025. Then we're going to move to Annihilation, which is the first book in the Area X series, I think it's called. Uh, and the author, I think, is called Vandermeer, his last name at least. And this is the book that the movie Annihilation is adapted from. And that is one of my, well, I don't know, maybe not favorite movies of all time, but it's definitely one of my favorite sci fi movies because it has echo horror, which I love. And this story follows a group of scientists that go into in an area on Earth. I don't know where it is. I think it's actually not named, but basically you have this area where a meteorite or something from outer space arrived and it started changing the biology of the of the area, and there are very weird things happening, and so people send in scientists to investigate, and chaos unfolds. That is, I think, the overall premise. I actually don't know how close of an adaptation this is. I loved the movie, so I think the general gist of the story is probably the same, and I think I would really like this story. I know there's a couple of books. One of them actually came out this year or very recently. I know that they don't necessarily follow the same characters, but rather many things surrounding this area, like I don't know if it's over time or even like different expeditions that have been done in this area X place. But Annihilation sounds so fun. And again, I've watched the movie, so I think I have a good reference. And I hope that it's even better than the movie because I loved that. And the last but not least sci-fi in this list is Semiosis. This is a very small book, both like in size, but also I don't think it's talked about as much. And a bit similar to how I've been talking about sentient octopi, I think this one in particular is also an first contact with alien story where you have sentient plants, or you have like, yeah, sentient plants are a big part of this story. And I don't know if they are incorporated into human civilization or if it's more of a first time they're interacting with these species. But this trope just fascinates me. Like I love first contact with aliens. I love sentient blank anything. And so I know the third book of this trilogy came out very recently, and the people that I follow that have recommended this story basically pitch it as, if you loved Children of Time, read this. And I loved Children of Time, and I think, I don't know if it's necessarily that if you love one, you will love the other. But if you like one, you should definitely at least try Semiosis. I know it's smaller, so I think it's a tighter project. I think some of the complaints Children of Time has is that it's too long for what it's trying to do. So I think this is going to be a more, bundled version of that. So yeah, I'm just really excited to see that story, especially with how disappointing Children of Ruin was. I think this is going to be my next attempt, or the next series that I follow in the trope of like civilization meets sentient X, and let's see what happens kind of story. So yeah, that is 14 books that I want to read in the SFF space. And then the last, but definitely not least, SFF priority book for 2025 is a, I think, sci-fi book that I got from Tobias from Christmas, and it's called The Memory Theater by Karin Tidbeck. It is in Swedish. So I talked in one of my earlier videos about me wanting to try more fantasy and sci-fi in Swedish by Swedish authors, and yeah, he basically gave me one of those for Christmas. So I am very excited. The story sounds very interesting. You have a I think you could say this is urban fantasy because you have a secret kind of world, or I think people call it portal fantasy, because you have this secondary fantastical world that is coexisting, or kind of, yeah, it exists in parallel, I would say, to our own world, and you have people that are interacting between the, basically people from this secret world interacting with humans in some way. And I think they are trying to escape because this is a dark, kind of labyrinthic, uh, yeah, dark world. And yeah, I don't know anything about this book beyond the back, and that's what it says. I know that this author has a lot of, or I checked very quickly that this author has a lot of works, and so if I really like this, I know I will have more books by them to read. So that's very exciting. I know it's going to be challenging because it's in Swedish, and it's, yeah, like I read like a couple of pages just to see the difficulty, and I realized that it was going to be hard. But this is exactly what I want to. And again, like, this cover is so gorgeous. I know there is a translation, so for those of you that are interested, this is this exists in English as well, and I think it's called the Memory Theater. And yeah, I think it's so exciting also to receive book gifts, because sometimes people will pick books without all of the kind of context that we, us, like, who are in booktube and who follow booktubers, and it feels like we know about so many books that are coming out, and like discussions, and even if you don't read them yourself, you recognize them or you're aware of them. So I think it's super fun when you get a book that you have absolutely no idea, no like preconception, or like like biases towards, because no one like has talked about this that I know. So yeah, that is the 15th priority SFF book, sponsored by Tobias, and it's the Memory Theater. Super excited to read these and all of the books in this list. Let me know what you're excited to read. What are your priority books for 2025 that you really want to get to? If those are the only books that you read in the year, that you feel accomplished, that you feel happy that you read those ones. So let me know down in the comments below, and have a great start to the year. And yeah, have a great day as well. Bye.